Welcome into Pushing the Limits. Today I'm doing a solo cast for you, so you'll hear all about that in a minute. Just wanting to let you know we have launched Avum Labs, our biotech company, and our product Rejuvenate. I'm very, very proud, and I'm actually stoked to have our product in my hot little hands right now because, as you'll hear in the podcast, I'm dealing with a situation with mum again, and it's been game-changing and life-saving, so very grateful to have it. So I want you guys to go and check it out. I spent 2 years along with a world-class team of developers and scientific advisors and biochemists and herbalists on this blend, and it's going after foundational health. It's going after immunosenescence, the aging of the immune system, gut health and cellular health. It's a real foundational product that is safe for everybody to take, and it's something that you should put in the base layer of all of your other supplements that you do. This one should be at the very, very start of that, because it's really going to help with barrier health, with gut health. It helps with transfer factors, immunoglobulins. It gives you back the younger immune system, the immune system that you had when you're a little bit younger and your thymus was actually functioning. It helps you protect your cells and keep your barriers strong in the body. And as you'll hear in today's podcast, barriers are very, very important. So head over to my shop at lisatamati.com and type in the search bar Avum, A-E-V-U-M, and our product Rejuvenate will come up. And alternatively, you can go to avumlabs.co.nz and check out all the science behind it, all the research behind it, the team behind it, and get some now and stay on it forever, because it is a real foundational product that is going to protect you moving forward. So there'll be more podcasts that we'll be doing on Rejuvenate, and we already did one a couple of weeks ago with Dr. Rod Claycomb, who is the founder of Quantec, and he has one of the key ingredients in our formulation called IDP, immune defense proteins, and he goes into a deep dive into that podcast, so I'd encourage you to go and listen to that. We'll be having a series of podcasts around this formulation, this cutting-edge formulation. We're launching into America. It's a clinician-based product in America, and it's going to be hitting the shelves soon. So if you're over there, stay tuned for that as well through the longevity launch team over there who have taken this on and launching it into America. And in New Zealand, it's going to be available through your clinicians and through my shop for starters. And your doctors and clinicians can order it on NutraScript, which is our clinicians portal. So without further ado, over to the show. This week I am doing a solo cast for you. It's been one hell of a week in my household. I've had a mum up in ICU with sepsis, so I didn't get to have the interviews that I wanted to have this week, but she is now back home and recovering. So I'm like trying to squeeze in my work and to share some insights with you really around, I wanted to talk about my background and why I've sort of dedicated my life now to health optimization and longevity science. And I've got a whole lot of questions. These are questions that I get asked a lot from my clients, from my audience, and so on. And so I thought, well, it might be a really good rough and ready podcast that would be able to share some of the insights that I've gathered both over my career as an ultramarathon, extreme ultra endurance athlete for 25 years, racing the world's toughest endurance events around the planet, and then also how that morphed into what I'm doing now and my journey with my mum, of course, which you all know about if you listen to the show. So what really made me dedicate my life to longevity and health optimization was, of course, I've always been interested in health and fitness and all of that sort of high performance stuff from an athletic point of view. But when my mum had her aneurysm a decade ago now and was left fighting for her life and in a state of massive brain damage, and I realized firsthand, I experienced some horrific things in our medical system. And this is not to put down the wonderful people that are in the medical system, but we experience some horrific situations of misdiagnosis and ED, and then many sort of problems along the way. And I started to realize that we're sort of all brought up to just trust in the system, trust in the authorities. They've got your back, right? And they'll always do what's best for you. And that is, unfortunately, for a number of reasons, not my experience now. And I'll be brutally honest with you. I want you guys to take control of your health and be preventative in your mindset into health optimization, so that you don't experience some of the things that I've had to experience, some of the horrors within our system. And, on the other hand, we've had just amazing surgeons and incredible nurses and doctors that have helped along the way. But there's some limitations to the way that the system is set up. I think a lot of people recognize that. And we have limited resources. So one thing that you have to understand is that you are fighting against a system that does not have enough resources for everybody. So if you have a loved one who is going through the system, you have to be there to advocate for their right to have these things. And sometimes I go in, when I'm going into a doctor's appointment with my mum, prepared like I would for a court case, because I have to present her the best possible chances, because they are allocating resources and they're trying to make a hierarchical decision on whether this person's a good investment or not. And that is the bare facts of life, that we are in a competitive environment, and the sooner you understand that, the sooner you'll be able to take charge of your health. So that's really what's led me into the world that I've been in now for the last decade with Pushing the Limits. I've done over, I think, 380 odd episodes with world leading experts across every possible area, because I'm fascinated by the science, the technology, the advancements. I'm excited about what's coming down the pipeline for us. I'm excited what is already here in the world, and I'm frustrated at what we can actually get access to here in New Zealand, at least, and some of the limitations. And so I work tirelessly. I have a group of doctors and allied health professionals that I lead, and I'm helping them to get educated in some of the latest and greatest stuff that's coming out from other parts of the world, mainly out of America. I must say there's a lot of incredible research, and my networks are extensive over in America, so that's where I tend to pull a lot of my resources from, to try to educate some of the doctors and clinicians and allied health professionals down here about what's actually happening in the world. We're talking about things like stem cells, like peptides, like some of the incredible medications that are not yet available here, some of the therapies, about things like hyperbaric oxygen therapy and PEMF and red light therapy. And I'm sitting here in my hyperbaric oxygen therapy clinic as we speak, and I have red light and I have PMF. I've been using all of these things in mum's journey and with my clients as well. And I'm astounded at the results that I get to see with these incredible things. And so it's all about education. So I've got questions here that I've written down, so I'll just go through them. Like, how was your background as an extreme ultra endurance athlete? How has that shaped your approach to health and resilience? Well, I think as an ultra endurance athlete, I learned to grind out the hard yards. I learned to push my body beyond what you would ever imagine a human body could do. I've run over 70,000 kilometers in my lifetime. I've done over 140 ultra marathons. I've raced in every continent except the Antarctica. I tried 3 times to get down there, but couldn't manage it. But I've pretty much run, across 2,000 Ks across the Sahara, the Moroccan, the Arabian Desert, Libyan Desert, Niger, Jordan, the Gobi Desert in China, Death Valley in the USA, of course, and the outback of Australia in different parts, also the Nepalese and the Indian Himalayas. And at one point, I ran right through New Zealand, 2,250 kilometers in 42 days, raising money for a charity. So I have a lot of experience in what it takes to do things that people tell you are impossible, and not to have very good genetics for it either. Not having a lot of talent or a lot of ability to do what I did, but doing it anyway. So what I learned on that journey is a mindset, right? That people will tell you that, no, there's no way out. There's no way you can do that. This is impossible. The situation you are in is impossible. You're never going to get through it. And that is not true. They don't know you. They don't know your resources. They don't know your network. They don't know what is happening out in the world. The medical knowledge, for example, is doubling every 79 days. That's unfathomable speed. Like, it's impossible for anybody to keep up. So where it used to take 100 years or something, I've forgotten the exact amount, but it was something like 50 or 100 years for the doubling of medical knowledge is now happening in 79 days. And with the advent of AI, that is going to accelerate because, and I've interviewed scientists in the research labs, how they're using AI to speed up their processes and to get through a lot more data a lot more quickly, what would have taken them. I interviewed Dr. David Furman from Stanford University and the Buck Institute's 1000 Immunomes project. And he said, I can do in my lunch break what used to take me months to do. So this is accelerating the knowledge out there, which is super exciting because that means there are things out there that you haven't yet heard about. And if you're facing a terrible diagnosis, something where they say there is no cure, well, back up the truck a little bit because that may have been true 10 minutes ago and maybe not now, and that may have been true 10 years ago and not now. So you have to be ready to research the hell out of what you are doing and keep looking, never giving up. So I think what I've learned from being an ultra endurance athlete is, number one, how to train day in, day out, whether you want to, whether you feel like it, whether you're motivated, or whether you want to crawl up in a ball and die in a corner, you still get up and you move and you walk. And if you can't, we have a saying in ultra marathon running, if you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl, just keep moving forward. And that has been my mantra. And in the last 10 years, I've had to use that over and over and over again. So the next question is, how do you apply the same mindset and discipline from endurance sports to your clinical practice in life? Well, it's about setting up routines and rituals and health things that I do every day in order to move my mother's rehabilitation forward, depending on whatever ailment we deal with. And she has really cheated death so many times in the last 10 years, and she's very fragile and she's got a lot of problems, but she's still here. And so every day is a structured routine as best as I can possibly make it. There is exercise to be done. She has to be moved every hour of every day, except when she's asleep, obviously, because we need to make sure that the toxicity doesn't build up in her brain because she has no reserve capacity. Her brain goes to sleep when she's not moving and it disconnects from her body, so to speak, because of the stroke and because of the aneurysm and because of hydrocephalus and brain cancer and all the things that she's been through. And so I have to move her constantly within the bounds of her energy for that day. Now, if she's not dealing with something like she's dealing with now, which we don't know whether that's come in through a portacath that she has in her chest, which is where they access and give her bloods, and that sometimes can get infected, and that may be the source of this infection, which is beyond our control right now. But if we're not dealing with something like that, we are going to the gym, we're going to the park, doing our training 3 times a day, like we are very focused on movement. Exercise is the number one longevity and anti-aging hack that there is out there. It's super critical. It's very important though, so for those athletes out there and for people with me, like an extreme ultra marathon mindset, to understand that extreme exercise is doing damage. It's on the other side of the equation. And there are times where you'll risk that and you'll push the limits, but there are times when you also need to find balance and come back and recover, right? And that's something I wasn't very good at, still struggle with, to be honest. But the right amount of exercise and doing it on a consistent basis is the most important thing that you can do for your health moving forward. We turn to a bowl of soup very, very quickly when we don't move. And I know this with mum, that I have to keep moving her in order for her not to decondition really, really fast. And everything that you see in an aging person is just accelerated, but it's the same process that's happening when you're younger or when you're middle-aged, or later middle-aged like me. The same processes are happening, just not as obviously, right? And so you could get away with a lot more than I can get away with mum. So I have to have a very, very strict routine around that. And I think it's really important to develop a discipline. So you have a mindset of come hell or high water. And I'll give you an example. On the day that of my father's funeral, my mother still had to train. And that's how much priority I put on movement and on keeping her active. It's that crucial that even on the worst day of your life, you have to move, right? So just putting in perspective, when you don't feel like getting off the couch to move your ass, there is really, you know, find some motivation somewhere. As long as you're not sick, as long as you're not sick, you have to work within the bounds of your body's where you're at. But even a small amount of movement is better than no movement. If my mum can't get up and walk, we will still do things in the bed. We will still be moving her arms. We'll still be moving her legs. I'll still be doing a little bit of core exercises. I'll be doing breathing exercises, etc. You get the point, right? So what were some of the pivotal moments that made you realize the limitations of a traditional medical system is the next question. Well, there's so many. I literally can't tell you how many. Right from the very beginning, where we were just misdiagnosed from having the aneurysm. They thought she was having a migraine, and we were left for 6 hours while she was dying and bleeding in her brain, to having had brain cancer. And for days, I was taking her into the ED, and they were telling me there's nothing wrong. And I knew that there was something wrong. Her whole half of her face had dropped, and she was slurring her speech, and her brain had gone offline. And yet they would not give me an MRI, and I had to fight for 3 weeks to get an MRI, which eventually then showed when I did ring and managed to get through to the radiologist, and they just actually put me in regardless because they knew my situation. And then the next day we found out, yes, she's got massive brain tumors. So half of the brain was covered in brain tumors. And then they moved. So if I hadn't pushed for that MRI, she would have died without us even knowing that she had brain cancer, right? And then when she had the brain cancer, and I chased the neurosurgeon around the country till I found him and got him on the phone and asked him to operate on her. And he had been her surgeon previously, and he said, yep, get her down here on Tuesday. So you have to push and you have to advocate. If you wait for the wheels of the system to turn, you may be waiting too long. So you have to push, politely, obviously, but very assertively to get the things that you need. They did the surgery, she came back from that, and then they did the pathology, and then it came back that she had weeks to live. This was a very aggressive CNS lymphoma, and that was 4 years ago. And I've written a book now called What Your Oncologist Isn't Telling You, which is actually an audio book based on 21 interviews with the world's top people in the metabolic approach to cancer. And as of at least 6 months ago, according to the MRI, we had no sign of cancer. So that's 4 more years of life that she has had, beyond what they told us was possible, right? And they didn't know the metabolic side of cancer. When they would go into the hospital, they'd be giving out cakes and Coca-Cola and with their tea and coffee and their chemo. They don't understand that sugar feeds cancer, number one. I mean, that's just a very, very basic level. You don't feed sugar to a person with cancer. You need to go low carb. You need to go on a more keto-based diet. You need to do a whole lot of other things. And I've done, like I said, 21 podcasts on that subject. But putting in a regime around her and not giving up, chasing, I went private oncology, and to be fair, this cost a lot of money, and I'm not wealthy. We had to pull out all the stops to make all of that happen. It cost the price of a house to save her life. But so far, we're still on the right side of her life, okay? And, for me, life is binary. You're either alive or you're dead. And when you're alive, you fight, and you fight like shit. It's just, that's my opinion. Every time I go into the hospital, they're trying to get me to sign an advanced care plan. Well, they can fuck off, excuse me, with your advanced care plan. If I'd signed that, or she'd signed that years ago, I've got power of attorney for her. That gives them the right not to do anything, okay? So don't sign that piece of paper unless you're really at the end, and then I probably still wouldn't sign it, okay? Because it's an attitude thing. But that's my personal attitude, not everybody else's. I understand that. So on to the next question. So caring for my mother, challenges and lessons. What were the toughest moments in a health crisis, and how did you navigate them? I think we sort of covered that here. But, there have been times when I have, one of the reasons I had this podcast was so that I developed a network of the most incredible doctors and scientists around the world. And then I've managed to get to work with some of them. And one in particular, Dr. Elizabeth Yurst, shout out to her. She is the boss when it comes to mum's health. And she is the greatest. She's known as the GOAT, the greatest of all time. She's been on this podcast 4 times. She's scientific advisor for my biotech company. She's absolutely a genius, an absolute genius. So I've had people like that in my life that have mentored me, that have networked with, that have really been pivotal. Just this past week, she's been on the end of the WhatsApp with me, 100 million times, available to me, which is, I know, is a super privilege, and we're in her program at the Boulder Longevity Institute. But, having people like that in your corner that you have to work to get under the right people is absolutely key, and doing that ahead of time before you actually need it. And there are many people, myself included, who do that for people. You can be in programs with different health professionals who can help you, rather than being reactive and having these 10-minute appointments with your GP. That's really not going to cut the mustard to get really deep into your health journey, okay? So how do you approach brain rehabilitation after aneurysms, strokes, concussions, brain cancer? Yeah, I've done a million podcasts on this one as well, most recently with Dr. Mark Allen. Then I've had Dr. Mark Gordon, Dr. Maisel DeMayo, Dr. Dale Bredesen. Who else have I had? Dr. Dom D'Agostino, Dr. Dayan Goodenow, Dr. Yurth again. All of these people on my podcast specifically looking at brain injuries of all types, whether you're dealing with neurodegeneration, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, concussions, post-concussion syndrome, all of these aspects of brain degeneration. And one of the cornerstones is hyperbaric oxygen therapy. You have to do enough treatments. That's the biggest, hardest sell point for hyperbaric, is you have to do a block of treatments. And when we're talking about something like a brain injury, and this is not medical advice, but you need upwards of 40 odd sessions. That's the thing. It's not a one and done sort of situations. Then things like ketones, I'm a big fan of. I've done whole podcasts on ketones, one recently with Devin Price from Kinetic, and I'm a big fan of his product, ketones. And for brain injuries, the other big player is plasmalogen. So I did an interview with Dr. Dayan Goodenow. Go and look these ones up, and maybe we can put links to them. That was just a few weeks back. I did a second interview with Dr. Dayan Goodenow. Plasmalogens are absolutely crucial for brain function. I've also done one with Dr. Michael Lewis on fish oils. Hormones are a big piece of brain rehabilitation. Many people deal with a lack of hormones, and a lack of growth hormone, and a lack of testosterone, and all of these other hormones that are affected because of the hypothalamus injury or the pituitary gland being injured through the brain injury. So all of these aspects go into, so when you get it, if you get a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, most people think that that's a death sentence. It isn't. It isn't. There is so much you can do, like from transcranial magnetic red light therapies. Like I've interviewed Dr. Lou Lim and Peter Adams at Vilight. I've interviewed a team at Neuronic on just how powerful red light is for the brain. Of course, hyperbaric oxygen, all of these aspects of therapies that you can do, but you have to be dedicated to rehabilitating your brain. It's not a 5-minute job, and it's a change of diet, and it's exercise is crucial for brain recovery. It's looking at your hormones. It's looking at it from a multifaceted approach. In fact, everything I do is multifaceted. I start when I'm looking at somebody, they may have a disease I've never ever heard of, and I put that disease in the middle of the page. And then I start to look at all of the aspects and all of the pathways, all of the inflammatory pathways, all of the genetics that may be involved, etc. And I map that out. And then I work out, based on my knowledge of pathways and things, what could possibly be effective here, and work backwards like that. So even if I have never heard of some weird out of the way disease, within a few hours, I have a big picture of how to tackle this, because I think differently. And I've been taught to think like that by Dr. Elizabeth Yurth, who talks about pathway medicine, not protocol medicine, not looking at it from a if this, then that. we need to look at the holistic picture of all of the pathways that are affected, the ones that we know, look a deep dive into the literature to see what there is, and understanding a lot of these pathways, we can attack a lot of these things that come at it from a different perspective often, and often with just natural supplements and things that are not dangerous and not, before, you get passed on to someone if it's more drug related. We don't deal with drugs, we can just advise you on who to see and what to do there. So that's sort of some of the things you can do around brain rehabilitation. The next question is, what role does gut health play in recovery, given conditions that are very common as you get older, like diverticulitis, IBD, Crohn's, even younger people like celiac disease, leaky gut, which is rife, all of these sorts of things. Well, one of the big things that's why I've spent the last 2 years working at Avum Labs, our biotech company, to bring our formulation to market called Rejuvenate. And Rejuvenate is about cellular health, immune health, and gut health. And one of the main things that it does is it repairs leaky barriers. Like, I am super grateful to have this at the moment with mum having sepsis. She's got leaky barriers, right? Leaky everywhere. And this is allowing the pathogens to get through into the bloodstream. And now she's on antibiotics. It's a downward spiral, right? And this infection has probably come in through the portacath perhaps, or it could have come in on food, or it could have been a urinary tract infection. We're not quite sure. There's a number of ways that and as you get older, it gets tougher and harder and harder. So I'm very, very glad to have our formulation now going in at very high levels, high dosages, to help repair that damage, along with other things like collagen, like glutamine, like KPV and PEA, like BPC 157, if I can get it at some point. These are things that one's a hard one to get now, but that one would be really gold for the situation we're in. Unfortunately, we can't get it at the moment. But there is so many things that we can do. Okay, and then there's your postbiotics. I'm a big fan of a product called Dr. Ahira's, which is in my shop, and this is the world's most powerful postbiotic. I did a group with my doctor group. I did a session with my doctor group, webinar with Dr. Ross Pelton, who's written 13 books. He's the natural pharmacist, and he has done a webinar on postbiotics and the power of Dr. Ahira's formulation, which is a 5-year fermentation process. So this I'm using extensively right now, right? So these types of things. I also have things like Daily Brain Care, which is a polysaccharide mix from Dr. John Lewis, who I interviewed on the show as well. And, having to monitor all of these, blood values and see where we're going, and are we, working well or not. But these some of the things that you can put into the mix for gut health. So if you're living overseas, BPC 157, KPV, PEA, Saccharomyces boulardii, lactobacillus, ME3 is a particular type that Dr. Harris brand has that's very powerful. Polysaccharides, slippery elm, things like that, partially hydrolyzed guar gum, collagen complexes, perfect aminos or amino acids complexes that are very important. Binders to bind up some of the toxins. I love fulvic acid, or you can use things like zeolite, all of these things that help bind up the toxins that are running around your system and getting them back out again. So that's sort of a partial protocol of what I'm doing at the moment. There's more in it, but I can't think off the top of my head. Of course, vitamin C is very, very, very powerful for helping with the barriers, with strengthening the immune system, with giving the macrophages the ammo to go and eat, and phagocytose, which is eating of the bacteria and the pathogens. So these are all sorts of things that you can consider for gut health. So if you've got IBD, Crohn's disease, colitis, any of these things, I've worked with lots of people with that type of thing, don't give up. There is a way forward. It takes a good 6 months, to be honest, to really work well on the microbiome, and getting a microbiome assessment done is a really beneficial tool. So we have the complete microbiome that I do regularly for my clients, and just to see exactly what we're missing, what is happening, what bacteria you're dealing with, what viruses, etc. what the state of your essential fatty acids is, how your digestive capacity is your gallbladder working, is your digestive enzymes working, and. So we assess all that through the microbiome and then put in a protocol, okay? So that's one thing that you can do. The next thing is osteoporosis, and this is again something that a lot of people deal with as you get older, especially women. Hormones are very, very powerful here. Estrogen replacement for women is quite a big thing, and testosterone. Contrary to the popular medical belief that testosterone is only for men, women also need testosterone, and it's very powerful for bone slowing down osteoporosis and helping there. I am not a fan of bisphosphonates at all. I'm sure there is a place and a time for them, but I haven't found it. And I know that these bisphosphonate drugs that they commonly use for osteoporosis, and I have some personal experiences with mum as well, they make like a bunch of bricks in your living room. They put more calcium into the bones, but they stop the turnover of bone, right? So you're not getting rid of bad, old, broken down bone. You're just making more bone, but it's more brittle. You get more abnormal fractures, so fractures that occur that are not normally seen, right? These are in different places. You can get osteonecrosis in the jaw, where your bone in your jaw starts to die. There are some peptides that are much better, but harder to get and expensive, like teriparatide. Don't quote me on that name. I just off the top of my head, it's I'm pretty sure it's teriparatide. Very hard to get in New Zealand. Unless you've been on the bisphosphonates for 2 years, then they'll consider it because they know that it causes damage. I don't know why they don't do it from the get-go. It'd be much better. And contrary to popular belief, it's not just all about calcium. Sticking calcium in the body, listen to the interview that I did with Dr. Thomas Levy in the book Death by Calcium, can have very bad consequences. Again, you can get into the soft tissues if it's going to the wrong place. So I'm more of a proponent of going down the route of collagen, of hormones, of there's a product called Algae Cal, which is quite good. Using a lot of bone broths and things for your nutrition, and vitamin C is another very important one. Getting good levels of vitamin C, vitamin D3 with K2, very important that it's with the K2, so it takes the calcium out of the soft tissues and into the bones. So, off the top of my head, that's the sort of regime that I would be using for osteoporosis and do on a long-term basis. Also, a product called GG, geranyl. This is from Dr. Barry Tan. Go and look up that podcast. He's a vitamin E scientist, in particular tocotrienols and GG are his specialties. And there is a lot of research about GG is very good for bone density. So look at geranyl. It's a very hard one to say, so I just say GG. Go and listen. I did 2 episodes with Dr. Barry Tan, Barrie, Tan, wonderful man, and he has research around that. Okay. The next question, why is it so important to you that your mother never ends up in an institution? And there's no disrespect to the people who work in rest homes, but there is no way in hell that I want her to ever be in a rest home. Number one, and this is really tough, right? To believe me, I am on the edge of what's possible sometimes. And it absolutely breaks me sometimes to try to keep her at home because she is so high needs care. But I know she will not get the care that she gets at home. She will not get the nutrition. The nutrition is atrocious. Your ability and your control over your loved one is completely lost when they're in an institution, and they know best. Okay, so you cannot even get, and I've worked with people with parents in these institutions where we're just trying to get basic vitamin C and some vitamins in, and you can't. And that's, absolutely tragic. You lose control over your own loved ones when you're in these institutions and indeed in the hospital. Of course, you know my story with my dad. Perhaps if you've listened to this show, I won't go into it as I'll start crying. But if there's any way possible to look after them at home, and believe me, I know what the sacrifice that is, and a sacrifice for your marriage, and a sacrifice to your whole family, and how hard that is, and how impossible it is for many people. But if there is a possibility, then keep them at home if you possibly can. And we need to up our game in the institutions. We need to up our game immensely. I'm sort of got a hope in the future that robots might be able to help us out around home. That would be great. Come on, Elon Musk, and some get your robots out there, hopefully doing something positive in the world. How do you balance medical interventions with alternative and cutting edge therapies? I embrace everything. I look at everything. I'm not a only natural therapies approach person. Of course, I do lead with that mostly, but medical interventions are absolutely necessary. Things like antibiotics are absolutely necessary at certain times, but you have to understand the collateral damage that a lot of those medications do create as well. So you're having to repair a lot of that with the natural stuff again. But in emergency and acute situations, you often don't have the choice, right? So you have to balance all of that. And again, my wonderful mentor, Dr. Elizabeth Youth, has helped teach me how to think about all of that. So yeah, there's some great stuff there. Mindset, mental toughness, and resilience. So how do you cultivate the mindset to keep going despite overwhelming challenges? Well, yeah, my life has been full of overwhelming challenges, of various natures, some self-induced sporting challenges that have been more than I bargained for, others being these health issues that I've been dealing with mum, and in my own life as well, of course, and with other family members. And we all go through them. The difference is I don't leave it up to somebody else. I take responsibility and I try and fix things as best I possibly can. I just take one moment at a time. I try not to think too far into the future. Of course, my brain starts to wander in the middle of the night and I end up in a, stressed out state, as we all do at times. And there's a lot of PTSD in my life and a lot of fear. And one day I will address that perhaps, but right now I'm in the battle, so I have to function and keep moving forward. And I think a lot of caregivers are in that sort of situation, where they're caregivers of disabled children or parents or whatever the case may be, or your partner. It's tough. It's tough for them, of course, and it's tough for you and people around them. If someone in your community is dealing with a situation like I've got, or with a disabled child or whatever, offer to help and really mean it. If you can really mean it, like do something for that person, cook them a home cooked meal, do their groceries, donate something, buy them a coffee at the local cafe, whatever it is that you can do and afford. There are people that are really, really struggling out there, and if you can actually help them and just give a little back to make their load a little bit easier. I know how much it goes a long way with me when I have, like just today, two wonderful people who are friends of mum's who've just, offered, can we come around? Can we babysit? Can we do anything to help? Just that's so important, because you sometimes feel like you're in the battle alone, facing these huge, humongous challenges. How do you handle emotional exhaustion and prevent burnout? I probably am burnt out and emotional wreck at times. I will be absolute honest with you, but one skill I have is I just keep going and I keep going and I keep going. And I cry and I let the emotions out and I scream and yell and, do all of that and and I prioritize good inputs, so good food. I really try to go to bed at set times and get up at set times. I try to have a set bedtime routine because my brain is always racing. So I do a lot of yoga, a lot of calming exercises. I try to prioritize in situations like now, where I can only work or go for a 20-minute run or a half an hour run while mum's asleep, like now. Then I just plan everything around that, but I try to put in good inputs. I take a lot of supplements. I try to prioritize putting good stuff into me so that I can put good stuff into her, you know what I mean? biggest mindset shift. So my paradigm's been broken, to be honest. What I used to think was a safe world that I lived in and everyone was trustworthy. And, of course, the whole COVID situation sort of rocked my world and changed my paradigm even more than the stuff that I'd actually experienced prior. And all of that together has just made me a fierce warrior for health optimization and helping people to navigate this space and advocating for change and doing whatever I can to make a positive impact in the world, because there's a lot of bad people out there doing a lot of bad things and a lot of limitations and a lot of lack of resources, and all that together makes for problems. So we just do the best that we can. How can others develop the resilience needed to navigate a loved one's complex health issues? Oh, geez. All of the above, I think, is probably, um, what I'd say to that. I think I've got a whole nother page of questions, but I'm sort of realizing I'm going to have to go and check on mum again. So I tell you what, we'll go to part 2 next week, and I'll let you know how we're doing there and how mum's doing, and give you part 2 on the rest of the questions that I've got lined up for you. In the meantime, thank you so much for being a part of my world. It's an honor to be able to share with you some insights. This was a rough and ready, raw, real, from the trenches type of podcast, to be honest. But I hope it helps somebody and empowers somebody not to give up and to keep fighting like we do every day. And I'm so proud of my mother. She is the toughest woman I've ever seen. Just stoic and just gets on with the job every day, despite tough times. And then her little grandkids come around and make it all worthwhile again. It's all about the quality of life. And she's had quality of life beyond 10 years beyond what they told me she would ever have. And long may it last, I hope. And I'll keep fighting for her until there is no future. Like that for me is, I'm just going to keep pushing. Keep pushing. And I encourage you guys to do that too. Big love to you all, and we'll see you again next week. Thanks so much for watching, and we hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, comment, hit the notification bell and subscribe, and of course share it with just one person who you think could really benefit from this content. Click here to watch last week's episode, and click here for my website, and click here to watch a video you may not have seen yet.